Welcome to Sun Speed. I'm Mark Gilbert and I'm joined by the Sun's voice of motorsport, Chris Hockley, and we're previewing the final Formula One Grand Prix race of the season in Abu Dhabi. So Chris, it's going to be a Grand Prix of hellos and goodbyes.
As you say, lots of hellos and goodbyes. A big hello to Abu Dhabi's new circuit and harbourside circuit around the Yas Marina complex. According to David Coulthard, it's going to be very tricky for the drivers. It's very narrow. It's got some crazy things. You go under a luxury hotel at one point, and the craziest thing of all is the pit lane exit, which is on an S-bend in a tunnel. So goodness knows what's going to happen there if someone shunts.
Is it also a fact that it's the first race which actually starts in daylight and will end in the night time?
Yeah, it is. We have the Singapore Grand Prix, which is a total night race. This one's going to be what's called a twilight race. It's been done in the States for many years in IndyCar races. It's no big deal really, but it is going to be an extra challenge for the drivers when the sun goes down and things like that.
And speaking of farewells, there's obviously a lot of drivers going to be bidding farewell to their respective teams. Kimi Raikkonen's leaving Ferrari, and Fernando Alonso's obviously moving to take his place. He's going to be ditching Renault. What are your thoughts on these?
Well, I think it's the biggest driver market shake-up for years, and I reckon it's going to be a blubfest actually at the end of the race in the paddock, because there's so many drivers leaving their teams. There'll be lots of hugs and kisses, I'm sure. We've got, as you say, we've got Raikkonen leaving Ferrari after 3 years, Alonso leaving Renault, Barrichello probably leaving Brawn, Rosberg probably leaving Williams. It goes on and on. The whole of the BMW Sauber team, of course, it's their last Grand Prix. They're pulling out, so they're off. And another big goodbye to refuelling in Formula One. There's no refuelling next year. So this will be the last time where we'll see pit stops where the guys shove on the petrol pump and away we go.
Just talking about going back to Kimi Raikkonen, are you surprised that, well, he's been linked with McLaren?
Yeah.
Is that going to be a good partnership with Lewis next season?
I don't see why not. I've said before on this show that Lewis doesn't really care who he's got as a teammate. Kimi will no doubt be very quick still. Although some may doubt his motivation. He's got 25 million quid in his pocket from Ferrari, so yep. That's going to help him, isn't it? No, I don't think Lewis cares. Personally, I think Lewis is going to be right up there again next year.
And fingers crossed for next year, another Brit will be up there, reigning champion Jenson Button. What have you made of his season?
Jenson, of course, as we all know, started off like a rocket ship, and then it became a lot harder for him as the other teams caught up with Brawn, who just hit the ground running at the start of the season. Be interested to see how he goes this weekend. A lot of people say he's going to be really relaxed. I hope he's not too relaxed after all that celebratory champagne that he's bound to have quaffed in the meantime, I should think. I think he'll go reasonably well, but I think Lewis is going to win. The Abu Dhabi circuit suits the McLaren. There's lots of slow corners leading onto fast straights, and that's just perfect McLaren territory. Put your money on Lewis.
With regards to Jenson's fantastic, championship victory, is he a deserving champion? He won the first 7. He won 7 out of 8 Grand Prix.
6 out of the first 7.
And has kind of struggled since then.
I think on balance he is a worthy world champion. He struggled because, as I said, the other teams caught up, and I think there was a mental problem there in that he wanted to score points, get some more points in the bank. Probably drove a little bit cautiously towards the end, but in the end he did it. He performed really well in Brazil. You can't knock a guy who won 6 out of the first 7 races, and brilliant for Britain.
So what are your thoughts on the season as a whole so far? We've had a lot of highlights and we've had a few lowlights as well.
Yeah, we've had Ligate and Crashgate, the usual political intrigue surrounding Formula One. It's been very busy on that front, but I also think the racing's been pretty good. Not as much overtaking as we wanted, but I think the best part of the season is seeing new teams like Brawn and Red Bull come along and going to each weekend not really knowing who's going to win. I'm sure the bookies have cleaned up this year because it's been really difficult to predict who's going to win on which given circuit. And it's made such a change from previous years of sort of McLaren and Ferrari domination, where we knew it was going to be one of the 4 guys in those cars who was going to win, but much more unpredictable this year, and that's been terrific.
It's been really interesting, isn't it? Because I think we've had 16 Grand Prix so far, and I think it's as much as 7 different winners, which is pretty rare.
It's pretty rare, and I think it's going to be the same next year as well. I think there seems to be a great equality among the teams now. Not much time difference on the grid. You've got little teams like Force India, who, by the way, I expect to go really well in Abu Dhabi again, who've made a great impact this year, and nobody could have foreseen that.
So speaking of next season, are we going to have a British Grand Prix?
Oh dear, well, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? Or the £135 million question. It's a right mess, Mark. It's just, I'm so cross and angry about it. We've more or less wasted 18 months now on Dunnington trying to get this money together, which nobody really thought they were going to do anyway. Eccleston is now asking for a £12 million fee from Silverstone to stage the race. But the problem is Silverstone's owned by a private club, the British Racing Drivers Club. They can't take a big financial risk that they might make a big loss. You know, they just cannot take that risk. So who knows what's going to happen? The intriguing thing that's popped out today, again, is the revival of the idea of a London Grand Prix, a street race, which of course would be sensational. We'd all love that, to see Formula One cars bombing up the Mall and zooming around Buckingham Palace and things like that.
But a logistical nightmare,
logistical nightmare, and of course it's not going to happen anytime soon. So there is a real fear now that we will not have a British Grand Prix next year, which will be a tragedy considering we've got a British world champion.
What would you like to say to Bernie Eccleston on that?
I'd like to say, Bernie, to think with your heart as well as your head. We all know you're a hard-nosed businessman, that's fine, and we know that the creation of modern Formula One is down to you. It's the second biggest global sport now behind soccer. But it's no good keep going to new circuits all the time where you don't get much of a crowd, like Bahrain and places like that, and leaving all the traditional circuits like Silverstone behind. And Britain is the home of Formula One. Most of the teams are based here. The fans are very, very knowledgeable. We've got to have a British Grand Prix, Bernie. However you do it, do it.
Now, another point on next year, we've seen the new Brawn Grand Prix team this season absolutely just flew out the traps.
Yeah.
We've got a fair few new teams coming on board next season as well. Can you give us a little bit of information about them?
Some intriguing gossip coming out about these new teams, actually. My sources this week tell me that the new Manor Grand Prix team might actually be rebranded Virgin Formula One next year. Richard Branson's very keen to have a team which is actually named Virgin and not just be a sponsor.
Right.
That seems quite likely and means they'll be well funded as well. Lotus team look like making the grid. They're very well funded from Southeast Asia, AirAsia and the Malaysian oil company Petronas on board. They're going to have a Malaysian driver called Farouz Fawzi, who perhaps isn't quite Grand Prix standard yet, but they're hoping to get a number one driver to take the number one seat. And they're after Jarno Trulli at the moment. We'll see whether they get him or not. Worrying though, the new US Formula One team, which we're all looking forward to see, there's rumours that they're not quite stepping up to the plate finance-wise yet, and we might not see them, which will of course let in BMW Sauber back in, or the new owners of BMW Sauber, who are an investment company called Quadback. So wait and see on all that, but we're going to have 2 or 3 new teams, which is going to be fantastically exciting.
Well, Chris, thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers.
You can keep up to speed with everything that happens in Sunday's race at Abu Dhabi by logging on to www.thesun.co.uk/race centre.